All right, let's go. Anna Yakutenko, my colleague, has given us the go sign. I'm Brian Bonner, Chief Editor of the Kyiv Post, coming to you live from the Kador building at 68 Jalanska Street. We have a very important event for you because as we have gathered three Americans in Kyiv among I don't know how many thousands of Americans there are, but our country has a big decision to make on November 3rd. And the Kyiv Post, for the third straight presidential election, is holding debates, bringing the presidential debate to Kyiv. Now, you can see the real thing tomorrow night when Joe Biden squares off against Donald Trump, I believe, in the home state of Chris Holzen's hometown of Tennessee. So we will watch that. Just to give you a rundown of our history, in 2012, we did the Obama versus Mitt Romney. Democrat won. 2016, we did Hillary versus Donald. The Republican won. So this is the tiebreaker. So today I want to go, without further ado, I want to first introduce our guest. Chris Holzen over here is the Republican, chairman of the Ukrainian chapter of Overseas Republicans. Holzen moved to Kyiv in 1995, so he's almost an original expat and supports Ukraine's democratic transition to various private and U.S. government-supported initiatives. He is a native of Nashville, Tennessee, known as the Volunteer State. The mission of Overseas Republicans is to inspire the 9 million Americans living overseas to engage more fully in the democratic U.S. process. So he'll be representing Donald Trump tonight. Reno Domenico is a veteran of all of our debates. He's president of the Sterling Business School in Kyiv, and it's in partnership with Rowan University in New Jersey, specializes in Lean Six Sigma training and implementation with clients across Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Europe, the Middle East, and the USA. He's been active in Ukraine since before the end of the Soviet Union, and since 2008, he has been either chairman or vice chairman of Democrats Abroad Ukraine, the overseas branch of the Democratic Party. So Reno is from the Garden State of New Jersey, and I am from the land of 10,000 lakes, Minnesota, usually a reliable Democratic blue state, but I'm actually registered to vote in Wisconsin and currently tracking my absentee ballot to make sure it gets in the right place. I checked today, it was leaving Cologne, Germany. I DH'd it, not taking any chances. So hopefully it arrives because Wisconsin was very close last time. So I'm going to start. I'm going to give try to give each side equal time, and I'm going to try to be equally tough on both of them. So I'll start by setting up Reno. Why would America want to elect Sleepy Joe, who's clearly too old, in cognitive decline, maybe early stages of dementia? Some say, people say, I don't know, people say that. And he's corrupt to boot. This Hunter Biden laptop shows that they were trying to cash in the Biden family on millions of dollars in contracts from Moscow mayor, from China, from all over the place. And isn't the choice really between Trump prosperity and a socialist hellish nightmare that Joe Biden would inflict on the American people? Trump wants to cut taxes. Biden wants to raise them. How on earth can we support this? Plus his Kamala, most liberal vice president. Take it away, Reno.
First of all, I'd like to thank Brian and the Kyiv Post for that wonderful question, but mostly thank the Kyiv Post for the community service they've done, not just with this debate, but for Americans and for the community of Kyiv in general, and Ukraine in general. They've done a lot of community service over the years, regardless of who was the editor-in-chief. Obviously, you're my favorite, but we do appreciate that you're doing this. And I want to thank Chris for taking the time out of his schedule for debating tonight. He's representing Donald Trump. I don't know why, but maybe we'll find out this evening. And I'll try to start to answer your question with a little overview of what I think this election is all about. Frequently in America, we use the terminology that this is the most important debate or the most important election in our lifetime. And we've heard that a lot over the years, and I think Chris and I both agree it's a standard phrase. But this is really a very important election because as far as I'm concerned and as far as a lot of Americans are concerned, our democracy is literally at stake. Now, I could spend a lot of my time simply trying to give you all the reasons to reject Donald Trump, and they are many. I think that there are a multiplicity of reasons to reject him. It's a long list. But that would be a disservice to Joe Biden. We could talk about the fact that in 2012, when we had the debate, I pointed out that Donald Trump has a history of stone-cold-hearted racist. He is a stone-cold-hearted racist. He always was, and he always will be. And he's exhibited it not just during the election in 2016, but he's exhibited it frequently throughout his presidency. But most importantly, right now, is we are in one of the most catastrophic events to ever happen in the United States and in the world. This debate, to some extent, Brian, is kind of a sad event. Ordinarily, as you said, we were in a Golden Gate pub. We were in some kind of social setting. There would be an audience out here besides the wonderful people who are doing the work for us here tonight. But we can't do that. And why can't we do that? We can't do that because the United States, the richest and most technically capable country in the world, failed to take leadership on COVID-19. And the rest of the world took a cue. We live here. We understand what's going on in Kyiv. It's not good. The situation is deteriorating in this city. People don't want to wear masks. They don't want to social distance. They don't want to take the mitigations. And that's because we've had a failure of leadership, I guess, here, and we've also had particularly a failure of leadership in the United States. This is the most catastrophic failure of presidential leadership in my lifetime, probably since the Great Depression of 1929. Because we simply, as the most technologically capable in the country in the world, could not come up with a contact tracing and testing program that would have mitigated this pandemic. And we could go through the whole list. It's only one case. It's only 15 cases. It's going to go away. It's going to miraculously disappear. We'll all be back in church for Easter. And none of that has come true. And here we are today, 69,000 cases yesterday, another 1,000 dead. And those are just statistics to a lot of people, but they're human beings. And this tragedy did not have to happen and should not be happening. It's a failure of leadership, it's incompetent, and it's a disgrace. And I could go on with the reasons why we should reject Donald Trump.
But you're ending your opening statement.
I'll end my opening statement.
Okay, now we turn to Chris. Chris, why on earth would we give this narcissist with an attention span of a 3-year-old who doesn't understand policy, who's destroyed America's reputation all over the world, destroyed our alliances, who sucks up and kisses up to dictators around the world, most notably Vladimir Putin, whose family seems to only be interested in public service so that they can cash in on it. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, I can. But before I do that, Brian, let me thank you for the invitation here, and just say happy birthday to the Kyiv Post.
Thank you.
25 years old, and that's about.
I wish I were 25.
Same here. And I do want to extend my great appreciation to Reno for reaching out to me also about participating in this debate. I think this is important that we do this, and with all of the rancor and the partisanship that really is in any campaign, but as we can see with the social media, it's become more intense now. I think it is important that we do take some of these traditions that we've had, like debates, and continue to have them, and have different sides represented, and talk in an amicable way, like I hope we'll do here tonight. I know we will. Before I came here tonight, I made a point to go watch the previous debate, and you asked, the one 4 years ago, and you asked at the beginning of the debate at the pub, just looked like there were 50 people there, so you asked how many of you are undecided? No hand went up, or maybe one way in the back? One. It was one. Right.
We were fighting over one vote.
Wonderful person singing the national anthem, too.
Nina.
She did a great job. So no person was undecided. Now, I'm looking out at this camera, the audience tonight. Hopefully we'll have many people watching us. And if you're watching and you're not a subscriber to the Kyiv Post, become one. I'm going to say that 5 more times before the night's over. I'm not going to change anyone's mind. Okay, so I try to think about how I would approach this debate. If I'm not going to change any mind, then perhaps I can just maybe let people see how it is that my thought process is working and see into the other side. People see my thought process. I would listen, learn a little bit more about Reno's thought process, and I hope by the end of the night we have sort of a better understanding of how each other thinks. But to your questions, in this debate, I hope we'll focus on the substantive policy differences, the platforms, and compare the visions of the two political parties as well. And I will begin by saying that in 2016, I think the system, and when I say the system, I mean the system in Washington, was so self-relational. It listened to itself. And I think that was borne out by the surprise that many people had in the election result, and other people who were not surprised by it, and that difference that's there. But by sheer force of personality, this president has unified my party. It's never been more unified. The president did this while simultaneously exacerbating the fault lines in the Democratic Party, a party which has never been more divided than it is now. The Democratic Party platform, they had 3,562 delegates voted yes to support the Democratic Party platform, this last one that was held. 1,069 delegates voted no. Over 1,000 delegates to the Democratic Party voted against the Democratic Party's platform. 87 abstained. Party officials were reluctant to release the vote count only after the Sanders campaign insisted that they do that. So the question, this all I come back to, is the people should be asking themselves, are we really running against Joe Biden, a decent, honorable man in my opinion, or is he held hostage? And if so, by whom? And will that bear itself out in the policy decisions that would later come in a Biden administration?
Okay. Maybe, can you explain what the Republican platform was?
The Republican platform, absolutely. The Republican platform was to continue policies of strong economic growth in the United States. Is this, if we're finished with the opening, or I could?
Oh no, I'm sorry.
No,
I don't want to cut off your opening.
I was done, but now
you were done.
Yeah.
No, but I just wanted to follow up, and I thought the Republicans didn't have a platform.
Well, again, a party platform is a mechanism for a political party to communicate out this is what it believes, so that people can look at that, understand how they want to vote. The Republican Party absolutely had a platform. There was a platform committee. Platform was passed. One can argue about the manner in which the platform might have been debated, but there was a platform.
Okay. So I'm going to take a next question, and then I'm going to ask the participants to question each other, and we can always do give and take. You guys are remarkably civil. I'm trying to stir you guys up.
Well, I would like to comment back on what Chris just
I'll
said.
I'll let you. But we're in Ukraine, so I know Americans decide the election on a whole bunch of issues. But let's just spend the next question talking about who is best for Ukraine and why, from that perspective. You want to take that one first?
Yeah, I will, but I do want to respond
Okay.
to what Chris
Okay.
said. And Chris made a very good point that Joe Biden is a good and decent man, and he is. And that is a real qualifier in this election, because we're running against a person who is not a good and decent man.
Hold on. I just got the message. Speak up.
Speak up. Right? If I speak up much louder.
Louder.
So, at any rate, Joe Biden is a good and decent man, and that is a real qualifier in this election, because the other guy is not a good and decent man. And I would like to talk about your comment about the platform. At least the Democratic Party did have a vote on a platform that was recorded, and we did discuss the platform. And there are differences inside the party. We are an active political party with serious people who have positions of interest. But we actually had a platform. The Republican Party simply re-endorsed the 2016 platform. Isn't that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So they really didn't have any new ideas. They don't have any new ideas for 2020. They don't have any new ideas for going forward. I tried to look at your platform because I wanted to be able to understand what it is I'm debating against. I'm debating against the 2016 platform.
But it may have been perfect, right?
It was absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
No need to change.
It may have been perfect. Just ask the 220,000 dead people how good it was.
Okay.
But back to your point.
Now you're getting there. Let's talk about who is the best for Ukraine.
You wanted me and then him?
Go ahead.
Okay.
And why?
So, Joe Biden.
Loudly.
Joe Biden was Barack Obama's point man on Ukraine during the time he was vice president. The United States has enjoyed a bipartisan relationship in terms of supporting Ukraine's democratic march to freedom and democracy over the years. That's something that we had never really had to question. It had been a bipartisan effort. Somewhere in the news, you may have noticed that Donald Trump was impeached because he tried to extort the new president of Ukraine as soon as he got into office for his own personal political reasons. That's why he was impeached. And it was impeached on a bipartisan vote. Correct? Correct.
I take issue with that because he was impeached on a full party line vote when it went to the Senate, which is not, it's the trial. Actually.
Yes,
So
yes. On
it's
the trial vote, you're correct.
But close.
The trial vote was a bipartisan vote. So essentially, Joe Biden has always been a good friend of Ukraine. The United States has always supported Ukraine. And we understand that the President of the United States said numerous really nasty things about the people of Ukraine. He said they're terrible people. That's a quote. And what actually was a plus that came out of the impeachment is that Donald Trump's hands became frozen, that he could no longer withhold aid from Ukraine, because that's what he was impeached about. He actually withheld aid from Ukraine during a time when Ukraine is in a physical military conflict in the east, and we don't know how many people died because that aid was not delivered on time, but we can probably be sure that some did. So we have negligent homicide in the case of not providing aid to Ukraine on time, and we have negligent homicide in the case of COVID-19 crisis in the United States.
Chris, take the Ukraine question.
Some Republicans would argue that this whole situation with military invasion of Ukraine would not be borne out in the East if the response when the invasion of Crimea took place had been different. And so, we're getting to the question of
Louder, Chris.
getting to the question of Ukraine. This really comes down to what was the response of the previous administration during the Ukrainian invasion. It was to tell the Ukrainians to back down. Okay, so there is some culpability in that. Joe Biden is a man impossible not to like. This is a quote from Robert Gates, the Secretary of Defense under President Obama, Secretary of Defense under President Bush, and former CIA director. Joe Biden is a man impossible not to like. He's a man of integrity and capable of hiding what he really thinks. One of those rare people you can turn to in a personal crisis. Still, I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue in the past 4 decades. This was asked of Robert Gates. He wrote it in his book some time ago. He was asked in an interview last year, do you still stand by that? And he said, actually, I do. The journalist asked him, do you think he would make a good commander-in-chief? And Gates paused and said, I don't know. So, for me, that's a pretty large indictment by somebody I hold in very high regard, someone like Gates, who, albeit is a Republican, but was palatable enough to the Democratic administration to keep him on at the Pentagon. It's not angry, it's just a recognition of what he thinks were decisions that were made by the vice president. So this is that administration. For Ukraine, Javelin missiles. First lethal aid that had ever been provided to Ukraine since its independence by the United United States. Military aid and training continues. Approved President, this administration has approved missiles in Poland, and you've had the largest ever U.S. military deployment in the region. I think at a time when Ukraine is struggling to defend itself, doing a very good job, but the military questions, I think, are the most important ones. To me, this is key. This is really key, and that's where I kind of have to go on the side of Gates that Biden was part of an administration that didn't see that coming. And I think it would have been different if you had different people at the table, and certainly if you had the current president there.
Okay, these are good points, and we're going to speak loudly so people can hear us there. So it is true that, one thing is we haven't had a presidential visit since 2008, George W. Bush. Obama never came here in the entire 8 years, and certainly it looks like Trump is going to end his term without setting foot in Ukraine. So that's not good. We don't have an ambassador. We have a charge d'affaires. So there is room for more engagement. But I want to get to the final thing about Ukraine, because Ukrainians are very, concerned, because the United States is arguably the most powerful and best ally they can have. We've had successful bipartisan support, Ukraine has, for a long time. Do you think that will continue no matter who wins the election? Reno.
I'm going to go, again, just a quick comment and
Okay.
come back to your question. I don't agree with Gates necessarily, but I understand your points. They're valid points, and they're worthy to be made. We also cannot neglect the fact that what the president, and president with an asterisk in my mind, did in terms of dealing with the ambassador, the American ambassador to Ukraine, was a disgrace. Maria Yovanovitch was a very good woman. She's a personal friend of mine. What was done to her was disgraceful. It was a manipulation of American foreign policy diplomats in order to achieve a personal political goal. He treated her terribly. He treated this embassy terribly. He's treated the country terribly. And I have no confidence that Donald Trump would ever project force in Ukraine under any circumstances. He basically has not projected force anywhere. And if you want to talk about foreign policy and who's a good commander-in-chief, we still have the issue of the Russian bounties on American soldiers, and they've never addressed that question. Not yet. No one has publicly addressed that question. A bounty on American soldiers. They've never denied it. They've never said a word about it. And of course, I'm sure he never called the emperor up north, Vladimir, and ever complained about it.
Yeah.
Back to your question, I think that American support for Ukraine will be bipartisan and will be strong. And part of the reason is because Donald Trump meddled here so badly that he's frozen the party's position in terms of what they can do here. They simply have no choice but to continue to support Ukraine at this point, or it looks like another political manipulation.
What about that, Chris? Valid points, don't you think?
Which one?
All of them.
Oh, okay. No. I think, Jens Stoltenberg at NATO has said many times that the United States and Europe are more united than they've ever been, and that the $100 billion that has been brought into NATO
Pouring in.
It's huge. Those are
Huge.
the real things that somebody like Vladimir Putin is really looking at. And so I think that to say that you're going to go really, and just be criticized by the press and roundly, because the language you're using, you're being too mean to Merkel, and the people in Brussels don't like you because you're not using the right words. But look at the bank account. And it sort of show me the money, right? So that, to me, to say that the president would sort of leave Ukraine hanging, but then would overhear, and I recognize that NATO is under no obligation to defend Ukraine right now, but I think that that's not really a holistic way of looking at the whole picture. So I do think that we disagree on that. So.
Okay, I'll just throw this little editorial comment in. If you took a poll in Brussels, I think Biden would win that easily. But I'll go this. This is another rough question for you, and you're going to get one really rough too. But Vladimir Putin, what is it with that guy? He's a rogue dictator responsible for murdering scores of people thousands of people in Syria, and is invading Ukraine, controlling 7% of the territory, and we now know, thanks to the New York Times, not the fake media, but the real journalists, that not only did Donald Trump not pay taxes, not pay much in taxes, he owes $400 million. Does he owe it to Vladimir Putin, and why doesn't he criticize Vladimir Putin ever?
Well, I mean, I don't know that he hasn't criticized Vladimir Putin ever. I mean, I'm not with him all the time. I'm not in meetings that he's at. Again, I'm looking at the policies, right? I'm not sort of fixated on everything that comes out of his mouth. I mean, after 8 years of beautiful sophistry and failed policies, I actually find that it's quite refreshing to have somebody who is not worried about, being measured on what he's saying, but measured on what he's actually accomplishing. So no, I don't think that he is under any obligation to go out and say a negative thing about another world leader. I think you need to measure the policies that he's putting into place. And there have never been more sanctions on Russia now than there have. It's the most. So again, is that not enough? He has to say something. Okay, I mean, but that's not how I look at who I want to support and the policies that I get behind.
Okay, and for you, wait a second. I got a question. The Obambi Biden team were weak. They let Russia take over Crimea in a matter of 3 weeks, and Biden, now we're finding out more from Hunter Biden's computer, could be the most corrupt vice president in history, according to Donald Trump. Needs an investigation for sure. And moreover, he tried to get a Ukrainian prosecutor, as I understand it from Donald Trump, fired because of corruption. He was trying to pursue an investigation in corruption at Burisma, which was paying Hunter Biden $50,000 a month. Is that true?
Sounds like a headline out of the New York Post. What you're right about,
I read that paper.
What you're right about is that Joe Biden did get a prosecutor general of Ukraine fired. And it's the prosecutor general of Ukraine that not only did the United States want fired, but so did the entire European Union. Everybody agreed. And again, this is not a discussion about Ukraine per se. I mean, we're trying to talk about the American election. But that guy needed to be fired. And he was part of an administration that eventually was run out of town, it seems to me. So I think Biden was 100% correct when he put that pressure on Poroshenko to get this guy out of town, and he did. Regarding this Hunter Biden story, I mean, I don't know how many rabbit holes we want to spend on, how much time we want to spend on that today. But when you let your drunk uncle Rudy Giuliani come running around Ukraine with wonderful people like Lev Parnas and Igor Furman, both who are under indictment.
Don't forget Andrei Telizhenko.
And Andrei Derkach. And it's a collection of who's who in the Russian FSB. And I think if you're going to do that, then you're going to wind up with the kind of policy we have right now. I mean, if there was something to find, if there was some corruption to ferret out, why don't you use the Justice Department, which is what maybe you shouldn't use the Justice Department, but that's whose job it is. But instead you send, really, Rudy Giuliani, who's a crackpot at this point, has ruined his reputation, and is cavorting with people who are known Russian agents. It's a disgrace. And again, you go back to should Trump, the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, Chris, I have to disagree with you. I think the Euro-Atlantic Alliance is nearly crippled and broken. I think it's very close to being destroyed. If I was sitting in Moscow right now, I'm sure their champagne bill for the past 4 years has been astronomical, because all they had to do was spend about $2 or $3 million on Facebook, and they got the whole American social system disorganized.
Okay, since some people know I'm a liberal Democrat and Chris still approved me as a moderator, I feel extra duty
Oh,
to be
boy.
tough on you.
Okay.
And going back to Obama, he drew a red line in Syria, didn't enforce it. Great powers don't bluff when they draw red lines. Wasn't that the go signal that Vladimir Putin needed to invade, run roughshod over
Certainly, I can't support what happened in Syria. I personally cannot. I think we made a lot of mistakes in Syria, and we're certainly not doing any better now. That's why when you mention accomplishments, I'm really hard pressed to find any. But I don't think that was a signal. I don't think Vladimir Putin needed a signal. And again, we're going basically into Ukrainian story. But I recall when Crimea was taken, and we were watching TV, and on Sunday morning, when the little green men started to arrive. And as you know, Brian, I've spent quite a bit of time in Crimea, and I remember John McCain, may he rest in peace, saying how he was shocked that the CIA was surprised about it. And the reason why the CIA was surprised about it is because they had never talked to any grandmothers sitting on park benches in Crimea. If you had talked to those kinds of people and you had been down there, you would have known that Crimea was very tenuous, and it could take a walk just like that. Because for 25 years, the Ukrainians did nothing, absolutely nothing in terms of investment in infrastructure, development, nothing in Ukraine, in Crimea. And if you were in Crimea, they would watch what was going on in Kyiv and in the Rada, balloons going up in the air and people throwing eggs at each other, and they said, this is crazy. And the place was a tinderbox just waiting to leave. It certainly wasn't anybody's calculation when this whole thing went down. But again, I think it's slightly off topic, Brian.
No, it's perfectly on topic.
Okay.
But now I'm going to, if Chris wants to respond, he can do that. But what I would like you both to do is to ask each other a question, and I will sit and listen politely.
Okay, Chris, you can go first. Go
Okay.
ahead.
What is something you like about Donald Trump?
See, I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey, and very near Atlantic City, between Atlantic City and Philly, little town. In fact, a Republican town, and my dad was a Republican councilman. But it was a different Republican Party then. I think it was a Republican Party you would probably be much more comfortable with. It was a Republican Party that when the election was over, everybody had one victory party. Everybody went to the same tavern. But we learned a lot about Donald Trump in those days because he bankrupted 3 casinos.
This is what you like about him?
No, I'm telling you what I don't not like anything about him.
Oh.
And in order to bankrupt 3 casinos in Atlantic City during the good times, there's only one way you could have done that. It's very difficult to bankrupt a casino. And when he did that, you know who paid the price? It was all the little guys. It was all the upholsterers. It was the barmen. It was the wait people. He never paid the bills. He stiffed everybody. He left all the invoices hanging. Donald Trump is a bad guy. Would you buy a used car from Donald Trump? Would you buy a new car from Donald Trump?
Is that your question?
Is that my
Okay, that's your question.
No, just
I don't own a car.
just you don't own a car. Right? You're safe on that one then,
Right.
until he starts selling them.
Reno,
Because he
do you
sold
have-
other things. He sold Trump Steaks, Trump University, Trump Airlines, all kinds of things, but none of them ever really stayed in
What's your
existence.
question for Chris?
My question, Chris. I think you're a good and decent man.
Thank you.
I think you're a
I
gentleman,
think the same of you.
and I think that's why we're having a relatively
These guys are so nice. It's
well,
really hard.
But one of the most despicable things I think about Donald Trump, and I really can't use kind words about him, I'm sorry, I just can't, is that you have to be afraid to let children watch a news conference because of the profanity that comes out of his mouth, because of the disregard for other people, the disregard.
And the question is,
How can you justify a person who does those kinds of things? I mean, I think he has psychological problems. I really do. I know I shouldn't diagnose from a distance, but I've been an educator and I've been in education for a long time. I think he's an emotionally disturbed person.
We all have flaws, and
Yeah.
the president certainly has his flaws. And I think, while he wouldn't be the first to tell you that, we did hear from his daughter during the Republican convention on how, you know, he's on a mission. And in going towards those policy objectives that he sees and feels passionate about and has unified our party around, really doesn't care how he gets us there. And that causes great discomfort, especially for people who are from this old system of the last 24 years of, you know, I mean, if you're a Washington insider, he's not your guy, and he's going to break eggs. And I agree with you. Sometimes he says things that are not something I would. I mean, people say, like, who would you like to have a beer with, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? I'd probably rather have a beer with Joe Biden. But I'm not voting for somebody that I'm going to have a beer with, right? I'm looking at, you know, somebody who's going to achieve. Look, I think there are tectonic shifts taking place right now in the American system. And what I mean by this is we're having, you know, the old model that was set after World War II in terms of media and information and what our relationship is with our government. It's under incredible stress. A lot of that has to do with things that Donald Trump and Joe Biden have nothing to do with, can't address. They're almost kind of, you know, riding the tiger, right? But what I do see in him is somebody who makes promises, keeps those promises, and doesn't care about people who get in the way as he's trying to do that. It's like, what, you know, you don't want to watch sausage being made, right? It's that people took a risk when they voted for him, right? They thought, okay, never run for office before, has said a lot of profane things, and yet the alternative was for there to be no change. And so I think, and as people feel this ground shifting under them, as you would travel in Appalachia and see the opioid epidemic based on the fact that you had 60,000 factories shut in the last 12 years because of failed trade deals, and you had somebody coming along saying, well, he didn't say he was imperfect, but we're going to do something about this. So, I mean, for me, that's where I get that passion. I see that. Now, I look at the former vice president, and I see a decent man. But you know, he's a hostage right now. And the question still remains, who is really going to be making the decisions when he's elected? And there are some pretty frightening answers to that question.
Well, Chris, you didn't answer my question, though.
Right.
My question was, how can you support a person who sits there and says, when the governor of Michigan is almost kidnapped, and says, lock her up? What is all this? He's in the disgrace of a human being.
Don't forget he called Stormy Daniels horseface after paying her off $250,000.
Well, I mean, look. It's about. He first of all, you're saying he accomplished a bunch of things. I don't think he accomplished anything, frankly. I think the statistics show that the economy is in much worse shape than it was before he came into office.
For after COVID.
Well, after COVID, the reason why COVID is the way it is because he didn't do anything. If we had taken any kind of, he doesn't wear a mask. He doesn't encourage people to wear a mask. He downplays social distancing. The last 2 days, I thought he's running against Anthony Fauci. I didn't know he was. I thought I had to go check the paper because maybe it's not Joe Biden anymore. He doesn't believe in science. He doesn't believe in climate science.
What do you mean
He pulled this out.
Believe in science?
He doesn't believe in science.
What does that mean?
What it means is that he was told you need to take action in January, and he didn't do anything about it. Look at Taiwan.
Nobody did anything about it.
No, that's not true. Taiwan has a population of 25 million people, roughly. Taiwan has how many COVID cases? Roughly 500.
Anybody
How
know?
many dead? How many dead in Taiwan? 7. You know why? Because they had a very scientific testing program and a very aggressive contact tracing program and a very severe quarantine for those who were infected. The United States of America, I grew up in a country that sent 3 men to the moon and brought them back alive. Right. Now I'm in a country that can't produce a testing program and a contract tracing program and can't encourage people to wear masks. Masks are all we got right now.
The third highest ranking person in our constitutional order was inviting people to come down to Chinatown, everything's okay, at the same dates that were saying that the president was not acting, number one. Number two, you all know Timothy Snyder, right? The historian?
Yes.
I love him. I love his writing, especially on Ukraine. I encourage anyone out there listening who's a Ukraine person, go to YouTube and listen to him talk about the difference between Ukraine and Russia and the Red Army, and it's really good stuff. He argued the other day that the president's looking for a Reichstag moment right now. He's looking for some moment to capitalize on where he can then extend some authoritarian powers. He had that moment. It was the COVID crisis, right? When it first sprang. And he didn't use that opportunity to exert authoritarian. That would have been the time that he could have said, I have one emergency powers, and people would have done it. So, it's like you can't have it both ways. You can't say on one hand that he's an authoritarian and looking for the moment to use his authoritarian powers, and then when the moment of all moments comes that he could have done it, now we're saying, well, he didn't act fast enough. He didn't act authoritarian enough. Few countries have done well under COVID. China, Taiwan, South Korea. Those are some examples. China's one of them, actually. The U.S. did not act like them because we are more diverse. We have 50 different healthcare systems. We don't have one single healthcare system.
So we need single payer, Obamacare.
Well, that's the financing of it, but good try. EU infection levels now exceed those of the United States. The last 7 days, according to the World Health Organization, the United States had an increase of COVID infections of 12.5%. I'm reading here. France, 40%. Germany, 66%. Italy, 100%. Croatia, 89%. Hungary, 17%. So they're doing something right, I guess. But
So very few nations are doing COVID well.
I think that you're comparing apples and oranges. Now, all that said, some of the ways that the president communicated were not helpful.
Okay.
I will grant you that.
Did you forgot Trump's talking point that Biden wanted to let the Chinese in when the president banned it.
The president was told that he was xenophobic because he was trying to close the borders, and then now you have people saying, well, he didn't close them fast enough. But look, here's the thing. Let me just say this. I agree with you, Reno, what you said at the beginning. This is a tragedy of, it's global, it's horrible, it's awful. But I just don't think that you can lay the global pandemic at the foot of the White House.
We are the number one country in terms of infections, the number one country in terms of deaths.
Well, we're much
The United States,
larger than-
the United States is 4% of the world's population, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's say 5%.
Okay.
5%. We have 20% of the deaths and 20% of the infections. And we are the most technologically advanced, the richest country in the world. And if we couldn't figure out a way to do this. The whole world was looking at us, Chris. The whole world was looking at us for a solution. And right now, our standing in the world is extremely low because our soft power has always been more important than our hard power. And our soft power, we had a great opportunity to solve this problem and lead from the very beginning. This is a catastrophic failure of leadership. It's a disgrace.
I think you both. You want to
one final
respond?
thing.
Okay.
I think to say, though, that the President of the United States, regardless of who it would have been or who it is, to be able to have on a dime changed the entire healthcare system of 50 different states, one that's larger than the country of France, is just, I will accept perhaps some failure in communication leadership there. I will grant you that. But I just think to say that that we all knew what was going to happen in January is just not fair.
But we knew by March.
Okay.
We knew in March.
All right.
Well, we didn't. Actually.
All right.
We didn't know in March 24th?
We didn't know truly how bad this was going.
I knew in March 24th that we were in bad shape because I was stuck out of the country. And nobody could, airplanes stopped flying. The whole world knew in March.
The xenophobic president wouldn't let you come in. That's
In March, we still can't go to the European Union.
Well,
American passport can't go to the European Union. Chris, this little simple device, a mask,
Right.
all he had to do was model for people. Encourage people. This is $1.50. Tell people to wear masks. It's all we got right now.
I got both your points, and I think the viewers did too. I
I got my mask here somewhere.
Yeah.
We're rounding the last 15 minutes, and I wanted to pick up on something Chris said, which is, Donald Trump has been, smashed the status quo. He was able to actually end two dynasties, the Bush dynasty when Jeb ran, and the Clinton dynasty. So on his first run for president, it's amazing. Although it turns out he had wanted to run for president earlier, but you said he united the Republicans, exacerbated the Democratic tensions. But given how polarized America is, if he wins the election, do you really want him to govern that way? And do you see any chance that he's going to see himself as representing all Americans?
Yeah, the answer is yes. He said at his inauguration, "I am here to represent all Americans, but I'm not here to represent special interests and the old system." And I'm fairly certain that if he is reelected, that he will not change his communication style. So everyone's going to have to deal with that, right? What I will look at is I will look to see, is he continuing to work with Mitch McConnell, the best legislator in our lifetime, in my opinion, in terms of effectiveness, whether you agree with him or not. Tip O'Neill maybe also, I could say. To get through reforms, education reforms, economic reforms, and I think really finally break through this redefining the relationship that we have with our government. And here's the thing, I don't know where that goes, but I know that it doesn't go backwards. And I just don't think that the nominee of the Democratic Party is inspiring me with new ideas. But I can at least see that in this brusque, bull in a china shop, not always pleasant to listen to person who's under nonstop attack from the day he went into office, I have faith that, at least for my philosophy, I'm an economic conservative, I do believe that he will be able to redefine that relationship while simultaneously keeping America sort of centered in a center-right economic philosophy that predominates in our system.
Okay, you brought up economic conservatism, so I just have to ask, we have a $3 trillion deficit this year, went up, way up under the Republicans. When are the Republicans going to go back to what they preached? Fiscal conservatism, low debt.
I would say to you, Brian, that this is where I do have some great disappointments with my party. It has been inflated by the COVID crisis. I don't think there was any question. It was an unanimous vote almost for the relief, trillions of dollars, and then another. So I don't think anyone's questioning that, okay? I mean, our country's, when you look at how we're leveraged, what we actually have in terms of, it's not just, you can't just look at it as financial, this many dollars, this much trade with China, but, what do we actually have, right, as a culture and a society? I think that we'll be fine, but I am worried a little bit about our party getting away from that adherence to what was true Republican tradition, to be against the sort of, conservative spending.
Right.
Brian, can I comment?
Yeah, hold on. Are you?
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
All right, I want to go. You can respond, but I wanted to ask you basically the same question: Donald Trump, the unifier, or Joe Biden, the unifier?
Well, first of all, Chris just scared me because what he's done is he's threatened we're going to have 4 more years of what we had in the last 4. And that's, I think, a pretty scary vision for most Americans. Donald Trump doesn't even pretend to be a unifier, Brian. Doesn't even pretend. He talks about red states and blue state governors and democratic cities, and he's a divider, except when it comes to his own self-interest. And again, I'm going to go back to Chris's comments because I'm hard-pressed to find any real accomplishments that this administration had. How about we go back to their signature campaign promise? We're going to build a beautiful wall from sea to shining sea, and Mexico is going to pay for it. There is no wall. It hasn't been built. Mexico's not paying for it, and the wall did not stop coronavirus. Viruses don't stop at walls. The real danger was the virus coming from Wuhan, and instead we're concentrating on trying to build walls to stop a few immigrants from trying to get into the country. Joe Biden does have a bold vision, Brian. One of them is based on the Green New Deal framework, which has been resoundingly criticized by the Republicans. And instead of coming up with ideas about how to reinvigorate American industrialism, what they've done is cling to the past and suggested that coal is coming back, we're going to save coal. There's no new coal mining jobs. Coal is dead. You know coal is dead. Coal is dead in Ukraine. Coal is dead in the United States. It's an energy system of the past. It's the same as if we were suggesting we should still be using horses and buggies. The horses and buggies, they really were nice. But, they just don't fit into the 21st century. The Green New Deal will create $2 trillion worth of economic opportunity, which can help bring some of those disaffected workers in places like Tennessee, your home state. And I know, I've been there, and the opioid crisis and all of this is very real. Coal mining was a very integral part of their economy down there. The guy was a hero. But it's gone. It's ended. Even the coal mining museum in Kentucky uses gas for heating. Even the coal mining museum.
Okay, I'm gonna let you respond.
That's a good fact.
But I want to. Man, if these two guys were in power, we could actually have bipartisanship. It looks like that. I mean, they're remarkably congenial and deal makers. The way
it ought to be done. The way it ought to be done.
I wanted to ask. The polls show Joe Biden is ahead, just like Clinton was ahead in 2016. Do you believe it?
I mean, I don't want to discount that. I think nationally right now it does seem that like a preponderance of polls that are from decent outlets are showing that the vice president has a lead. But I would caution people to look at some of the polls that were the ones that were right last time. The Trafalgar Group is one of them. There's Benjamin Strell who's doing polling and successfully predicted the Brexit and also the presidential race last time by state, with 3 exceptions. I think he got Nevada and New Hampshire wrong and one other. But what I think we're looking at now, this is sort of putting on my kind of campaign manager hat. There are people who are not comfortable sharing their opinions on the polls, and so, as you know, they'll give an answer that's maybe not what they're really going to do when they go vote. Some survey companies will ask, well, do you have a neighbor who's going to vote for such a, and then the real answer will come out. Polling is not a perfect science, right? It's involving humans and psychology. So my sense is that the race is closer than the polls suggest. But I would also tell everybody, looking at a poll of the nation doesn't do us any good when these are state by state races, right? I mean, they can tell you that that the vice president may receive the majority of the.
This leads to the next question. I mean, if we could be in the third situation in our country where the candidate who wins the popular vote loses the electoral vote, do we need to change that system?
First of all, I agree with Chris that the polls are closer than I think the election is closer than the polls show. You might recall in 2016, I was not real surprised that Trump won. I was disappointed, but I wasn't real surprised. I've been in politics long enough to know that there's only one poll that counts, and that's the one that takes place on Election Day, which, by the way, is happening while we're speaking, because 33 million ballots have already been cast. The Electoral College is an anachronism left over from a time gone past. I used to be, kind of nostalgic about it and used to feel very strongly about it, but we've had 2 elections in this century already where the winner lost. We're the only democracy in the world where the winner can possibly lose. California has 40 million people. There are 23 states that have 40 million people that each get 2 senators each. So California has 2 senators, and then 23 states create 46 senators. Our system is creaking because it's outmoded for what's happened, and I think some of it is what you said. The media.
Chris, you agree?
I don't.
It's time to change the Electoral College.
I'm in the middle on this somehow because first of all, I think this was the great compromise. If you're a state, for example, like the wonderful state of Rhode Island, you have a small, tiny population, and if California, you've got this huge population. The Electoral College was an agreement on how to keep our union together and come up with a way that people could accept at that time. I think that it's again, I talked about some tectonic plate shifting, and it's putting incredible stress on our system. This is an example. I think that if you continue to have elections and if this happens again, I think I don't know what the answer is.
I do know the answer.
The small states are going to want an answer. But I do think it does start to become a little dangerous if you have this repeating too often, because it's supposed to be an anomaly, right? And if it becomes the norm, then people are going to question democracy in that case. So I'm with you on that, but I don't know what the answer is.
There is a simple answer. There is actually a simple answer. It's called the National Popular Vote Compact. 23 states have already passed the compact, which is that each state will recognize the popular vote winner with all of its electoral votes once 270 electoral votes pass the compact. And there are something like 250, so they need 26 more votes, most of them coming from states that aren't inclined to pass it.
However, that's an interesting concept. I've not heard that before, but interesting.
It's pretty popular. Look it up.
But I will. But they have to amend the Constitution.
No, it would not require amendment of the Constitution. It's a compact among the states. It would avoid the issue of going through the amendment of the Constitution. It's a compact among the states. It doesn't take effect until 270 electoral votes worth of states actually pass the compact. And 225, 223, something like that have already passed it.
It's interesting. But these are the kind of things...
I'd like to make one more point, and let you go. The reason why that compromise, and that's a really important compromise that you're talking about, and that compromise was to maintain slavery. That's what the compromise was all about.
Okay, we got the history. All right, I want to go.
That's not true. That's the founding of our country.
Right, and the compromise they had to make was how to protect the interests of the states that were afraid of losing there.
Okay, let's go with.
And here we are today, still same problem.
Do you think there's a problem to discuss with voter disenfranchisement?
Mint.
It's late.
Enfranchisement.
And also Donald Trump threw out, well, I don't know, maybe I'll accept the results or not. Is that just Donald being Donald?
It's Donald being Donald.
He will accept a loss.
Of course. If he loses, he'll accept it. Yeah.
Let's hope it's not close.
Well,
do you share the fears?
I think if we look at what happened in the summer when there were protesters outside the White House, and Donald Trump used all the force that he could possibly muster of police power to overpower peaceful protesters standing on Lafayette Square, to push through, hurt people, so he could stand in front of a church and hold the Bible upside down. I think we can't count on this guy to do anything right. Donald Trump is interested in only one person, and that's himself, him and his family. That's all he cares about. And he is deathly afraid of not being reelected because I think there's a tax police looking for him.
Well, we're at the end of our hour, so we're going to test our democratic institutions in the next less than 2 weeks. Oh, my God, 13 days. So we're at the end of our promised time closing statements. I started with Reno. And so we'll reverse the order. Go with Chris. Chris, get your last anything you want to talk about. Just to wrap up.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you
Were we
for
tough
coming.
enough on each other?
I think you guys are great.
Okay, all right. On the issues that we discussed here today, we still are looking at a system, right? So we have to consider the members in Congress who will be putting legislation forward should the Vice President prevail in this election. And if the Democrats win the Senate, that's a possibility as well. And those people who supported the platform and who voted against the platform in the Democratic convention, you have the base of the far left, okay, in the Democratic Party, and then you have, I would say, good, decent, moderate Democrats like Reno, but for those people, the platform was so unacceptable, right? Some people say this is Bernie's support. Well, I don't know. But for those people who said that it's not acceptable, those people will be the ones who will be dictating to the next administration what legislation is going to go on the desk there. So we got a taste of that today. Chuck Schumer wants to replace I love Dianne Feinstein. She's a Democrat. She's from California. She's fantastic. I wish Mondale had chosen her instead of Ferraro in '86.
Might have been better off.
But anyway, I like her. And she's one of the most respected and decent senators in the United States Senate. And so just today, we see where the Democrats are calling for Senator Feinstein to step down from the Judiciary ranking member. I'm sorry, I'm reading here. Schumer announced he had a long and serious talk with Feinstein about her stepping down because she was basically too nice to Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, this is the thing to come. Dianne Feinstein being pushed aside. She's an icon in her party, and they're pushing her aside. If they can do that, imagine what kind of power they're going to have at the White. Now, again, if you're
When Chuck Schumer becomes the majority leader.
well, for sure. This is. Thank goodness there was Senator Chris Coons actually, had a cooler head and said, I'm not going to comment on this, which means he's a decent guy. He's, in party and thinking the right way. I'm worried about that. I'm really worried about that. And then I would just say that, I didn't want to talk about age or anything like that today because I think both of these candidates are, they're both in their 70s. But again, if you look where Senator Harris comes from, and her lifelong political leanings, I think that they represent something that is very different, that would give very different policy ends from what I would like to see happen. Again, I'm not saying she's a bad person. I told you how much I like Joe Biden. This is really the key. I wanted to say two things if I could. I also wanted to make a disclosure that everything I say here tonight, just my opinion, right? Doesn't
Personal
represent anything
opinion.
else. Personal opinion. When I was in college, I actually was asked to come and pick up Joe Biden at the airport in Knoxville, Tennessee. I went to the University of Tennessee. And it was kind of funny because I was chairman of the college Republicans, and I was on this committee of students who brought speakers, and it was '89, so it was after he had had a first run for the White House, and so they, as a joke, said we're going to send Chris to go get him. I thought, why not? This would be neat. So I went out there, and so I had an opportunity to drive Senator Biden around for a day and a half. Took him to the airport, then I got to see him up close. I got to see him how he treated the people at the front desk, how he treated the people working. After the speech was over, how he treated students. A truly decent person. I can tell you that we didn't have cameras on phones. We didn't have phones back then, so I don't have any pictures of this meeting. But his chief of staff at the time was from Chattanooga. can't remember his name, but so he came with him as well. It was a very pleasant experience. I like that. All that said, I believe he's a hostage, and that's what concerns me. So if he was elected on the 20th, if he's sworn in on the 20th of January, I'll put my hand over my heart. I will salute my president, but I will be very, very afraid.
Okay. Chris has set it up. This is your final word.
First of all, again, I'd like to thank you, Brian, for hosting this event, and I'd like to thank the Kyiv Post for being the venue for this event, and for all the people who have stayed and helped put this together. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, very, very kind of you. Chris kind of summed up everything I need to say, but I'm going to say more anyway.
Sure, it wouldn't be Reno, Domenico.
Chris said Joe Biden is a good and decent man, and that's enough right there to contrast with the current occupant of the White House. That's a good enough reason to vote for Joe Biden, but there are many others. You know, a number of things we didn't even get to talk about tonight. We never talked about Donald Trump pardoning criminals. Roger Stone, General Flynn, all of the other people who have been, Blogovich and a Democrat. No reason to pardon this guy. He was corrupt as the day is long, tried to sell a Senate seat. Donald Trump gives pardons as if they're for sale. And I'm sure Paul Manafort's just sitting there waiting for when his turn's going to come. And I wouldn't be surprised if the president loses, he pardons himself, because he is a tax cheat. He wants us to all pay the bill. And again, I appreciate your conservatism, economic conservatism, but we are drowning in debt. The United States is printing money faster than you can imagine, and we're spending it like drunken sailors. In fact, I think I'll just quote from, and you read a little bit, so I have to read. I have to be able to get even. This is Ben Sasse, who's a senator from Nebraska. Nebraska is really one of the least liberal states in the United States. He's a current Republican senator. This is what he had to say about Donald Trump. The way he kisses dictators' butts. He really does like dictators. We all know that. I mean, the way he ignores the Uyghurs in literal concentration camps in Xinjiang right now. He hasn't lifted a finger on behalf of the Hong Kongers. The United States now regularly sells out its allies under his leadership. The way he treats women, which is despicable, and spends like I added the despicable part in, and spends like a drunken sailor, that's true. And he said, the way I've criticized Barack Obama for spending is the way I criticize Trump as well. He mocks evangelicals behind their backs. His family has treated the presidency like a business opportunity, and he's flirted with white supremacists. He doesn't just flirt with white supremacists. He can't seem to remember who they are. He couldn't remember who David Duke was, who is leader of the Ku Klux Klan. He can't remember who the Proud Boys are. They're a neo-Nazi fascist organization threatening violence in the United States. He just can't remember these things. He can't remember who QAnon is. All these wild right-wing nut jobs. He's a very dangerous man. We haven't talked about health care. The Republican Party, since 2010, has been promising repeal and replace the health care, Obamacare. Well, here we are 10 years later. Not one plan has ever been promulgated in Congress to replace Obamacare. And Donald Trump has told us on more than one occasion, in 2 weeks, the new plan for health care will come. Well, we're down to the end, Chris. It's a little late. I don't know when this health care plan is going to show up, but it ought to show up pretty damn soon. And we're not going to have it before Donald Trump's no longer in the White House. Hopefully. And lastly, we've had the situation with gun violence in the United States, and we haven't talked about that. Donald Trump incites violence. He tells people, stand by and stand down. He just incites continuously. When 47 people were killed in Nevada by a sniper sitting up in a nest that he built in a hotel, Donald Trump didn't say we have to do something about gun violence. Not one word about that. And the number of black young men who have been killed in our country, unarmed by police officers, is a tragedy and a disgrace. We watched George Floyd literally lynched by a police officer's knee. Now, I'm not saying that I think I have good friends with a lot of police officers. The police officers in my town are good people. I've always had good relationships with them. But they do have a problem, and one of the problems is they shoot too quick. and they have a tendency to shoot young black men. Trayvon Martin. It was an absolute disgrace. That young boy.
Okay. Are you?
Not quite. But the point is, Joe Biden does have a plan to address these huge problems we have in the United States. The Green New Deal framework, a new health care plan with a public option, making workers' rights more important again, advocating for unions, allowing unions to organize better, electoral reform. The list goes on and on. And this is a watershed election in America. If you haven't voted, go to votefromabroad.org. It's still not too late. Votefromabroad.org is a bipartisan application.
I'm all for it.
Everybody can vote from it. And vote your federal write-in absentee ballot right now and get it off right away, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get a ballot in from abroad right now. Again, I want to thank Chris for his for being willing to be here tonight.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a great evening. Thank you very much.
I'll sum up by saying there's a lot of things we didn't get to, but what I hope we got: taxes, economic.
I pay
opportunity,
mine.
so forth. So, but what I hope we convey is that we're three Americans with different views, who love our country, who believe in our country, who want the best for our country, and we care enough to vote and participate. And we hope that that democracy, that democratic spirit, goes throughout the world, as great leaders of our country have tried to promote for centuries, certainly for decades. So I think that's it from the Kyiv Post tonight, and hopefully we'll know on November 4th or late November 3rd who's the next president, and we'll see you again in 2024. Keep your calendars
God
open,
willing.
Chris and Reno.
God willing. God willing.
And subscribe to the Kyiv Post.
And subscribe to the Kyiv Post. Thank you and good night.